Livia Paggi, partner at GPW. Livia, I wanted to just get first your initial thoughts on this VP debate. Normally, vice presidential debates don't get this much excitement and this much attention, but this is probably the most watched and most sought after VP debate maybe in American history.
Yeah, good morning. Absolutely. I mean, this vice presidential debate was really here to provide us insight into what potential future presidential candidates could look like. And this is mostly because we have Biden and Trump, who are both over 70, and Trump also has now contracted COVID. But also, really interestingly, the presidential debate is two white men. And here, for the first time, we're really seeing a face-off between how race and gender can play out in this. And I think the conclusion is, as we said, is that the debate was much more about policy than personalities, and that really came through. And Kamala Harris did very well. The race and gender issue, she did touch on it, but it was done eloquently. And Pence also, he really sort of held his ground and really, was very careful and strategic in the way he brought everything back into sort of what the economy would look like in a pre-COVID situation. So they each stuck very much to their party lines.
They did indeed. Good morning to you. It's great to have you with us, Livia. Look, the bottom line is these polls are moving away from Trump. You would say that he didn't get this sort of rally the flag sympathy vote that Boris Johnson achieved as his illness took hold. How do you think America has assessed that moment on the balcony, the drive-by? What do you think America is perceiving these risks? Are they a brave leader, or is it folly?
I think the country is very divided on that. I mean, certainly Trump was playing to his voting base to show that he doesn't really have much of a choice. He has to show that he can move on. He has to play down the virus. That's been his line up until now. He could have made a turnaround and say, let's come together and fight this, but he decided to ultimately come through and continue on the main line that this is not as serious as everyone's making out to be. And I think it very much continues to play on the divisions along the country between part of the country that has really suffered from it, and then also a major part of his voting base, which continues to believe that it is not a major issue necessarily.
Livia, I was quite surprised how much foreign policy played in this debate. President Putin, Qasem Soleimani, Xi Jinping, all of these names were brought up in the VP debate. How important do you think to American voters foreign policy is? First part of that question. Second part, how much will it change if we were to see a Biden administration?
Foreign policy traditionally has not really moved the needle in previous American elections. But I think in this election, it's particularly important because it really sort of highlights the key differences between what a Biden and a Trump administration would be like. A Trump administration would continue to ignore global institutions. Trump himself, ignoring even how to take on the stimulus package, for example, versus Biden, who's really going to engage in multilaterals and put America back on the map. And that's why I think they really gave it a certain kind of importance in this in this debate, because it really sort of highlights how the key approach is going to be in all sorts of different policy matters.
Livia, can I ask you that there's still much debate about whether the president would go peacefully for wrapping up a great number of stories. What is important here? Is it what Mitch McConnell has to say? Who is it that we should pay attention to when we try to understand whether that's a real risk or rhetoric?
I mean, I've been telling my investors that we do slightly tongue-in-cheek that we really need to treat this as America's emerging market election, simply because there are so many unknowns. Yes, we've had a contested election in the past, but it wasn't in the middle of a pandemic in the situation we are now. I think we do have to take seriously the fact that Trump has laid down the groundwork to potentially contest the election. Whether the Republicans will back him, whether, how he'll play out in practice remains to be known at this point. However, what we can say is that the debate did give space to it last night as well, and we discussed the candidates discuss what would actually happen in practice. And they both, what was interesting was that Pence said that the Democrats also tried to contest Trump's victory last time. So I think we do need to keep it really in mind. As we said, Biden is ahead in the elections. If there's a clear win, that will really minimize the risk of a contested election, but it's still there.
Livia Paggi, partner at GPW, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Coming up.